Hi, this is Dr. Adam Manley. I wanted to close CTE 5140 with a short presentation on how to become an impact teacher. Most of the information that I'm going to share with you is from a book called The First Days of Schools by Harry Wong. Essentially, there are 4 stages of teaching. We go through a fantasy, survival, and some of us make it to mastery, and very few of us make it to impact level. When you think about the fantasy stage of teaching, or at least when I think about it, I think about leprechauns and unicorns, because that's really kind of the reality we find ourselves in. To make an impact, really what we're thinking of in the fantasy stage is that we need to relate and be their friend. And this whole thing with standards and assessments and student achievement and all that is just kind of blah stuff. And the whole goal in the fantasy stage of teaching is to entertain students, but not to teach them anything. Very shortly after we enter into the profession of teaching, many of us that fall into the fantasy stage find ourselves quickly going to a different type of stage of teaching. And that different type of stage is the survival stage of teaching. For the survival stage of teaching, you're still trying to develop instructional strategies. You just haven't done it yet. I typically look at this as your first year or two of teaching. So because you're still trying to hammer out all the kinks in your teaching, you're looking for busy work. You're completing worksheets, having the students complete worksheets, having them watch videos, maybe the entire movie. And really when it comes down to, you're just basically teaching for the paycheck. I would say a good portion of teachers that stay in for at least 4 to 5 years and longer eventually make their way to the mastery stage of teaching. The mastery stage is when you begin to discover how to achieve student success on a regular basis. And so it's almost like golf. When you first start playing golf, you're very inconsistent. And the more you play, the more you practice, then you start to have a more consistent game. And teaching is exactly the same. So you've hopefully by this time adopted some effective practices. And you know how to manage the classroom in your own style that works nearly every time. Typically, mastery teachers, they teach for mastery when it comes to the standards or objectives that they've been asked to teach, and they have very high expectations of their students. They also work beyond the classroom, so maybe they attend professional meetings to learn more about their craft or to learn more about teaching. And really when it comes down to it, one of their sole missions in life has really to become a teacher, and student learning becomes really, really important to them. Now, some of us make it, and I don't know if I would put myself in this stage, but there's the impact stage of teaching. And that is where teachers begin to make a significant difference in many of their students' lives. And so I typically mark this stage as you will start to get thank you letters and emails and maybe conversations with students years later when they run into you, thanking you for what you did. And so really, you're now working even beyond mastery. You really see yourself, you identify yourself as a teacher, almost first and foremost. And so you do more than make a difference. You are the difference. And so many times impact teachers become leaders within their own school or their own school district. Now what's alarming is the difference between fantasy and impact teachers. There's really, when you look at student achievement, research shows there's about a year's worth of coursework between the two. So a bad teacher's class, maybe they only get through half a year's worth of coursework. But an impact teacher's class, they could get through 1.5 years of coursework, and nearly every student could master that amount of coursework. Now, the effective teacher has some characteristics. One is they have positive expectations for student success. They don't look at students and automatically put negative expectations on a few and positive on others. They see it as a whole. All students can succeed. They also are extremely good classroom managers. Some research that recently came out a few years back was trying to examine what makes a great teacher and found that some of the great teachers had a thing they called with-itness. And that is basically they had eyes in the back of their head. They were tuned in to their class and knew when they lost a learner. And also, they can design lesson for student mastery. So, teacher has positive expectations. What we mean by that is the teacher believes in the learner and that the learner can learn, and that the learner will produce what the teacher expects the learner to produce. And so, if they expect little out of them, then that's what the learner will get. If they expect a lot out of their student, then that's what they'll get. Expectations are critically important in teaching. I mean, to give you kind of a far-fetched idea, but one that's empirically sound, is that we typically look at physically attractive students and we judge them. And when we judge them positively. We think that they have more intelligence, that they have a higher academic potential, they've got a greater potential to make better grades. And we would think that as we have more education as teachers, that this type of perception that we have would go away. And lo and behold, it just gets worse. And so the more attractive a teacher thinks a student is, the more they actually think the parent is involved in the student's life. So I point out this kind of unique piece of research to make a point of how important expectations and perceptions are when it comes to the learner and the teacher. The second effective characteristic of an effective teacher is that they know classroom management. And so, like I've already mentioned, classroom management is not about discipline to these individuals. It's about managing the environment and the students. So typically when you look at an effective teacher, they're doing more of the social-emotional approach and instructional approach when it comes to classroom management, not the authoritarian approach. And the last effective characteristic is that the teacher has lesson mastery. The teacher knows it's important to design a lesson in which a student will be able to learn, and then deliver the lesson in the right way, and then assess and provide corrective action so mastery can take place. So in other words, many of their assessments are more formative rather than summative. So lastly, when it comes to your first year or your first few years of teaching, first thing I would say is beg, borrow, and steal. Veteran teachers love to share, and the good ones do share. So hopefully you can find some good stuff out there. If you happen to have gone through a teacher education program and student teaching, you probably know that it will not fully prepare you. It is impossible for a student teaching experience in teacher education to prepare you. And in career and technical education, many times we only require a couple classes in teacher prep, and then you can become a certified teacher. So really what it comes down to is if you want to get to the impact level, you are going to have to pursue education and more education and more education. And also it's important to join organizations such as ACTE and DECA and FBLA, National Education Association. Attend conventions, conferences, and workshops, sometimes on your own dime because your school district can't pay for it. And then also what's important is find those good teachers. Stay away from the negative teachers, but find those good teachers and work collaboratively with them. One of the unfortunate things with teaching is that you're hired and you're expected to perform immediately when the students walk in the door. So I suggest, if possible, go in during the summer to prepare. And also understand, as they do in the First Day of Schools book, that the first week is critically important. It's also important to understand that education is not a product. It's a never-ending process. If anyone tells you that there's quick fixes and foolproof methods and simple answers, then don't believe them. We're teaching humans, which means we're going to have all different types of variables that come into play when we're trying to become an impact teacher. And with all that said, there is a recipe for a happy and successful career in teaching. And the first one is work well with colleagues. You're going to be working with them, and you can rely on them when times get tough. Make sure to form friendships with mentors and coaches and the positive people in education, and stay away from those that are negative. Join a professional organization such as ACTE and attend their conferences so that you can network and find other teachers doing great things. And lastly, continue to learn through every possible way that you can. These 4 steps will help you make it past the 5th year and make it where you are now entering into a very long and happy career in teaching. I hope this class has been helpful for you. Good luck in your education, and contact me if you have any questions. Take care.